From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soyini Gray. Mexico is facing a new future after the left-wing candidate Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador swept to a larger than expected victory in Sunday's election. Newspapers splashed his call for reconciliation across their front pages. The latest preliminary results give Lopez Obrador over 53% of the vote, while the party supporting him have a majority of 70% in the lower house of Congress and 54% in the Senate. For many Mexicans, a wave of optimism is washing over their country.
What is coming up now for all Mexicans is the change that we've been waiting for years, and we really believe that things are going to change with regard to health, politics, the economy too. I think we're going to have better lives in this country.
I am more than satisfied with the results. I am satisfied because in reality, I didn't like either candidate. I am satisfied with the work the authorities have carried out. I am satisfied with the people's participation. And I'm more than satisfied with the civility that the candidates who lost have shown.
If what he wants is to eradicate corruption, so do we. So what we need to do now is to demand for the proposals made to be respected. Demand, in an orderly and trustworthy way, for the proposals to be respected and for us to help him as a society.
Yes, President Donald Trump has announced that he has spoken directly to Obrador. The two discussed border security and the North American Free Trade Agreement, along with a possible separate trade deal between Mexico and the United States. Trump said he believed the new Mexican leader would help the United States with its border issue.
And I will say that I just spoke with the president-elect of Mexico. We had a great conversation, about a half an hour long. We talked about border security. We talked about trade. We talked about NAFTA. We talked about a separate deal, just Mexico and the United States. We had a lot of good conversation. I think the relationship would be a very good one. We'll see what happens, but I really do believe it's going to be a very good one. He had a very excellent election, did, I would say, even better than anticipated. I told him a number of years ago when I saw him campaigning for a different race, frankly, a different year, a different race. I said, someday he's going to be the president of Mexico. So he remembered that, and it turned out to be correct. We had a great talk.
Lopez Obrador in turn confirmed on Twitter that he had spoken with Trump over the phone and offered to reduce U.S.-bound migration in exchange for U.S. assistance. The Trump reads, "I received a phone call from Donald Trump and we spoke for half an hour. I propose exploring a universal deal involving development projects that would create jobs in Mexico and by doing so reduce migration and improve security. We were respectful to one another and our representatives talked." Leaders of the West and Latin America have taken to Twitter to congratulate him on his victory.
Leaders from Latin America showed solidarity with Obrador too. President Nicolás Maduro congratulated the Mexican people and their new president, saying it was an opportunity for friendship and a triumph for sovereignty. Juan Manuel Santos of Colombia sent his congratulations, as did El Salvador's president. President Piñera expressed his intent to strengthen bilateral relations between Chile and Mexico in the next 6 years. Michel Temer of Brazil spoke of their historic relationship and how they will look to become even stronger with Obrador in office. The UK's opposition Labour Party leader, Jeremy Corbyn, said that he believed that the president-elect will represent the voice of the marginalised and poor.
And earlier I spoke to the political analyst Alexander Main from Mexico City. Main is the director of international policy at the Center for Economic and Policy Research in Washington.
Lopez Obrador has been rather quiet on the foreign policy front and is often said that, he really wants to focus on Mexico and that the best foreign policy is sort of focusing internally on improving the lot of the Mexican people. But he's also sent out some, I think, very strong signals, and particularly in recent speeches, Last week he spoke against hegemony. So that was a clear reference to the U.S. And I think particularly the U.S.'s involvement, throughout the region. And of course, the U.S. has been very involved in regime change in Latin America. And also, he sent out a very sharp message about the importance of non-intervention and sticking to this principle. So that, I think, is also a break. I think that signifies a break with the sort of foreign policy that we've seen from Mexico for many years now that's been very much aligned with U.S. interests in the region.
A victory by Lopez Obrador was widely expected, but the scale of his triumph shows just how many Mexicans are anxious for change. Pablo Perez reports from Mexico City.
By a landslide. That's how everybody's describing Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador's virtual victory in yesterday's elections. And there are some interesting numbers to be seen now that the preliminary results program has advanced to over 50% of all the voting station accounted for. And it means that it shows that Andres Manuel has an advantage, having over 53% of the votes, which is something that is unheard of. And so far, it seems that he will have a majority in both chambers of the Congress. And also, the Partido Revolucionario Institucional, the PRI, Revolutionary Institutional Party, the party that held the power for over 80 years, was voted against by 3 out of 4 Mexicans, which give us a show of how tired and endangered the Mexicans feel with the Enrique Peña Nieto's regime.
We thank Pablo Perez for that report. Now, for the past 12 years, Mexico has fought violent drug gangs by deploying thousands of police, soldiers, and intelligence officers to crack down on cartels and their leaders. Now, if Mexico's new president-elect gets his way, however, negotiation may replace the hardline strategy that critics say has only perpetuated violence.
As soon as President Obrador takes office, he's quickly going to make some dramatic decisions, such as the Amnesty Initiative, Transitional Justice and the Truth Commissions, the peace process for the country, and new social compensation for the institutions. We have to start respecting institutions.
Lopez Obrador has said he will push for reconciliation amongst all Mexicans during his term. He vowed to hound out corruption and impunity and to build a new era in Mexico's history. He also promised to pursue a friendly relationship with the United States and to cooperate with them as the country's main trading partner. The 64-year-old will become the first left-wing candidate in decades to take power in Mexico, Latin America's second largest economy.
The revolution of conscience triumphed. The transition will happen with harmony. It will happen in an orderly, peaceful manner. From the first day of our government, we will start to fulfill our commitments.
After his win, thousands of his supporters gathered at the emblematic Zocalo Square in Mexico City to celebrate his win. As candidate, he successfully tapped into voters' outrage over a series of corruption scandals and the horrific violence that left a record 25,000 murders last year. The winning candidate promised to establish a government with a social approach, with 3/4 of the preliminary results in.
This victory is for the new generations and for the many people who have been waiting for something like this for many years.
For all Mexicans living in isolated poor communities, for those in terrible need that the other parties never saw, for those Mexicans who have never seen history being made, it's a special day, it's a holiday.
The 3 other presidential candidates acknowledged their defeat and wished Lopez Obrador the best for his upcoming term. As you heard earlier in this newscast, he beat his opponents by a large margin and is expected to break with the decades-long establishment set by the 2 traditional parties.
I said on the phone when I spoke to Lopez Obrador just a few minutes ago, I recognized his victory. I gave him my congratulations and I wished him success for the well-being of Mexico.
I wish the new government a lot of success for the good of our country, which deserves a responsible government.
At the end of the election day, the outgoing Mexican president, Enrique Peña Nieto, praised the country's democracy. He congratulated the people and the candidates for exercising their democratic rights. Peña Nieto said the transition of power will be organized and efficient.
I acknowledge each and every candidate that participated in this electoral process. Your efforts are proof of a clear will to contribute to the development of Mexico, and it confirms the vitality of our democracy.
Time now for a short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Brazil fans loudly celebrated their team's entry into the World Cup quarterfinal on Monday with chants and dancing around the Samara Arena. The star of the team, Neymar, who was both architect and executioner for Brazil, who inflicted a 7th straight last 16 exit on the Central Americans, sliding home in the second half and then teeing up Roberto Firmino late on. Brazil fan Daniel Pereira said he almost had a heart attack while watching the match before the Paris Saint-Germain forward secured the second goal. And Mexico, who enjoyed an enviable recent record against Brazil, having won 7 of their previous 15 matches, were a threat on the counter in the first half, but then faded without ever really being put to the sword.
I think Mexico didn't play very well. They lacked chances to score. Brazil's goalkeeper didn't have to stop one ball because Mexico didn't make it happen. So Brazil deserved the victory.
It is difficult because we feel like brothers and sisters, Brazil and Mexico. So it feels like a victory, but it hurts at the same time. It doesn't matter. We will try again next time.
And it was a close call, but Belgium managed to get an edge over Japan and qualify for the World Cup quarterfinal. Belgium won the match by 3-2. Belgium's Chadley managed to score the winning goal. Naturally, the Belgians were overjoyed while the Japanese were commiserating over their loss. Belgium will now go on to play Brazil, which according to the Belgian coach will be no easy feat.
I feel that it was a tragedy, but I have to accept the defeat as a fact. I feel devastated and very disappointed.
When you play against Brazil, you need to understand that they are the best team in the competition. And I think you have to accept that. The quicker that you understand your role, the better that everything gets clear. So against Brazil, we'll have to have real clarity of how to play against an opposition like that, with the quality of individuals like Coutinho, Neymar, players that they can decide the game in 1 second.
Now, a restaurant in St. Petersburg has caught football fever and started creating portraits of famous footballers on their pizzas. The chefs used stencils to cut cut out the portraits out of cheese, which include the Russian footballer Fedor Simlov and the Portuguese star Cristiano Ronaldo CR7. And speaking of cheese, it turns out that the French national football team have ordered 400 kilograms of the good stuff from a local supplier. The Russian dairy farmer Oleg Sirota has become the team's official go-to. He says they take 3 blocks of cheese per day, which is about 12 to 13 kilograms. France is set to face Uruguay in the World Cup quarterfinal on Friday. And the Colombian coach Jose Pekerman and the team captain Radamel Flaco held a pre-match press conference at Moscow Spartak Stadium on Monday ahead of their round of 16 match against England. Pekerman said there was good news regarding the previously injured player James Rodriguez, saying he doesn't have any big or serious injury. Flaco called England an amazing team before adding, "We have to continue with the same task step by step, and then God will decide." The Colombian team held a training session at Moscow Spartak Stadium and will face England at that very stadium on Tuesday. And England fans nervous about facing off against Colombia are being offered the chance to de-stress by watching a match of puppy football. The pet food company Fresh Pets will stream a match between a litter of English Bulldogs and Maltese Bichon on its Facebook page on Tuesday, with the Pooches kicking off just as millions of fans tune in to see if England, under their captain Harry Kane, can beat the South Americans to reach their first World Cup quarterfinal in 12 years. The UPEA university dispute is ongoing with the Bolivian government. However, talks are now set to resume. Our correspondent in Bolivia, Freddy Morales, brings us the latest.
Government authorities and representatives from El Alto State University restarted negotiations on Sunday to try to agree on demands of the university for a bigger budget. The main topic of the debate is how the budget and the subsidy are being used and on what they will spend the money that they are demanding. This is why the government insists on doing audits that will make clear how the funds will be allocated. President Evo Morales took the situation in a press conference. He said that he feels disappointed with the academic results from El Alto University, which was created 18 years ago. He said that he dreamed about this university becoming a great institution that developed young professionals, but that the reality looks different. This is why the president has proposed the idea of refounding the university with the El Alto community and participation of its social organizations. Meanwhile, the negotiations will restart in the city of La Paz. The conflict began in the middle of May with blockades and a hold on activities in the cities of La Paz and El Alto.
Thank you, Freddy Morales, for that report. Now, the former Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa was formally charged with planning the kidnapping of the former Assembly member Fernando Balda in 2012. He was expected to appear in court on Monday. The prosecution could ask the judge, Daniela Camacho, to take Correa into temporary custody if the former president doesn't comply with the court's order. Now, 2 weeks ago, the National Court of Justice ordered that the former president appear in court in Quito every 15 days, even though he has lived in Belgium for over a year now. And Correa wrote on Twitter that he did appear at the Ecuadorian consulate in Brussels and stressed his right to live abroad. He described his supposed link to the case as illegal and illegitimate, saying that everyone knows it's a vulgar political persecution. The CARICOM Heads of Government meeting will take place in Montego Bay, Jamaica on Wednesday. The island's Prime Minister has also been named the chair of the regional body. Among the topics for discussion will be the CARICOM Single Market and Economy, disaster resilience, and the report of the Marijuana Commission which will be presented at the conference. The body has arrived at recommendations which the regional prime ministers will discuss at this week's meeting. There will also be 2 special guests attending the conference, President Miguel Diaz-Canel of Cuba and Sebastián Pinera of Chile.
President Pinero is no stranger to us in our community since he interacted with our heads, I think, in 2012. And the newly elected president, Diaz-Canel, of course, only having been sworn in as president, will be interacting with our heads of government for the first time, although Cuba is no stranger to interacting with our Caribbean community.
Now, on the issue of the CARICOM positioning on marijuana, Secretary General Erwin LaRocque says the consideration of marijuana use tends to look at two main categories, the first being recreational usage and the second, its medicinal properties. But he explains why freeing up the former will present more of a challenge than the latter.
Certainly, the Commission encourages, in addition to decriminalization of marijuana, freeing up marijuana for scientific purposes, for medical use. Within that context, I would imagine that one could allow for trade in medicinal marijuana. And there's a distinction to be made. In the international law governed by various, starting with the UN, there's a protocol of the UN, would preclude, at this point in time, the trade of recreational marijuana. Even within the United States, for instance, you can't move marijuana from those states who have legalized it into those states who have not, unless it's medical marijuana.
St. Lucia and Grenada have apparently agreed to help subsidize the operations of the Caribbean airline Liat. Antigua's Prime Minister Gaston Brown made the announcement, saying that the two governments had agreed to contribute funds to the regional airline. This means they will join Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Dominica, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who are the airline's primary shareholders. Intra-Caribbean travel has long been a concern and will be discussed during this week's meeting of the CARICOM heads of government in Jamaica. On Sunday, heavy rainfall caused serious flooding throughout North Trinidad. Videos circulating on social media show cars partially submerged in floodwaters, and several buildings in the capital of Port of Spain were closed on Monday for cleanup work to their ground floors. The floods interrupted a steel pan concert in the Woodbrook area, but some of the panists weren't deterred by either the rain or the water rushing past their feet and continued to play regardless. UNESCO has declared the Chiribiquete National Park in Colombia a World Heritage Site. This national park is a sacred place for indigenous people and is considered one of the most significant biological hotspots in the world. The Minister of the Environment, Luis Gilberto Murillo, celebrated the recognition for Colombia, its biodiversity, and the great contribution of the communities living there that make conservation possible. In international news now, more than 40 leaders from African nations have gathered in the capital of Mauritania for the 31st session of the African Union. The leaders have vowed to fight corruption and rising extremism in the region. They pledged economic reforms and to work on a sustainable path for Africa's transformation. During the two-day summit, the leaders also discussed the African Continental Free Trade Area and ways to resolve conflict on the continent.
The Mauritania summit must consolidate the momentum that has been set in motion to make our union the tool capable of concluding the transformation begun in Agenda 2063. We must also speed up the pace of institutional reform of our union. Reform is an existential condition of our union.
In the latest report of mob lynchings in India, 5 men were beaten to death in the town of Dhul. Most lynches have been, most persons have been lynched because they were suspected of being child kidnappers or thieves after rumors were spread through the messaging app such as WhatsApp. The authorities have launched public awareness campaigns to stop the lynchings, but so far that campaign has been unsuccessful. French police have launched a massive countrywide manhunt for a gangster who escaped jail by hijacking a helicopter in Rio, which is in the southeast of Paris. Redon Fiad broke out of prison with the help of two heavily armed accomplices who hijacked a helicopter for him. Fiad was serving a 25-year sentence for a failed robbery. This is the second time Fiad has escaped. In 2013, he blasted his way out of a prison in northern France using dynamite. And rescue workers have found the 12 boys and their football coach alive after they were trapped in a flooded Thai cave for 9 days. There had been no contact with the boys aged between 11 and 16 since they went missing with their 25-year-old coach last Saturday. The massive rescue effort had been hampered for days by heavy rain that flooded the Tam Leong cave in northern Thailand, blocking access to chambers where it was hoped the group will be found alive. And before we end the show, remember you can watch our special World Cup program with the Argentinian football star Diego Armando Maradona. De la Mano de Diez, the world according to Maradona, will air only on Telesur every night throughout the tournament in Russia. These are the times to watch it. Be sure to tune in. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Suni Gray. Thank you so much for watching.
In a world infested by inequality,